Blessings in Jesus' name. It's important that we, as Christians, remember that God can place you in prison to protect you. God can put you in with the lions to show what He can deliver you from. God will make His name known before His enemies and before His own people. He will make His name known. And so, again, I state that God can place you in prison to protect you and for His name's sake. Everything that God does is for His name's sake, because it holds His name. So, if God places you in prison to protect you, would it be wise to resist the arresting officer? It's never wise to resist an arresting officer, because either they come with authority or the facade of same, but they come with. And so the authority that they pretend to have costs them, but nonetheless they wield it. Do you understand what I'm saying? If you stick your flag on something because you're stronger than another, you'll have it for a time. So it is the case nowadays that An Garda Síochána are, like many of them, hired mercenaries. And the reason I say that is because they favour the courts, their superior ranking officers, over the constitution of this land and their oath. They hold the Freemasonic ties that they have up higher than they do their oaths of office and the expectation placed upon them by way of their taking up such a position. However, because they're in that position, they have authority. Did God agree with Pharaoh in any aspect? Well, he opposed him. So he disapproved of him. But still, for a time, Pharaoh had authority, even to imprison his people collectively. But when you think about that, yes, his people suffered, but they were preserved. So oftentimes, to preserve your people under a temporarily stronger enemy or power, you must enslave them to that power just to save their lives. And God says that we were under the elements of this world as our caretakers. Even as our caretakers. Even though they were oppressing us and keeping us in degrees of bondage, they were still our caretakers. They preserved us. Not that they of their own power preserved us, but they sort of took care of us. Not for good purpose, but still nonetheless. And so the point I'm making is that whilst temporarily you might eventually belong to Satan's household, he is somewhat incentivized to preserve you for that later date. Because a kingdom divided against itself cannot stand. If Satan was slaying all humans at birth, he'd have no kingdom. He'd have no one to worship him. No one to do his bidding. So a kingdom divided against itself cannot stand. My point is that God can leave you in the custody, in the care of people who would not preserve you. Ultimately, they don't care for you, but they will use you opportunistically, albeit, which will be your preservation. So God can put you in prison to preserve you, even to save your life. Can you imagine that an entire village is overrun by marauders, but you were preserved because you were in jail? The only reason you are alive is because you were in prison. Well, God is able. So don't resist the arresting officer, Christians. Go with the officer. Now, question him. By all means, question him. Ask him to stand on his oath. Ask him to behave towards you fairly. Don't undermine his authority, because he has nothing but from God. Remember what Jesus said to Pontius Pilate, who permitted his death under his authority. You would have no authority over me if it was not given to you from above. So even Jesus's enemies were given the authority from the Father to do what they did to Jesus. Because they would have no authority but from the Father. Does that mean the Father harmed Jesus? No. It means that the Father entrusted powers to men, and men chose to misuse them. These men don't tend to be without all integrity. Their vanity tends to see them wanting to have something to be accoladed for. Even vanity can be situated in a place that is advantageous. So certain weaknesses of character can actually be used to an extent for the preservation of others, be by nature of that characteristic. So somebody might be vain, but then you would predict their behaviour. So the spirit that you're conquered by makes you predictable, because you will serve that spirit, and that spirit behaves in a certain manner in a certain situation. So there's an element of predictability with the chips on the board, so to speak. And so I say, not with conceit or claiming all knowledge, but humbly. A power that is situated by God is so for a reason. You cannot offend it by arms. You cannot outpower it because it has its power from God. Don't be foolish. Don't resist the arresting officer. Go with the man with the gun, simply stated. And so, even if he's unarmed, it's just a way of saying it. You go with the man who has the power. And even if you're stronger than him, you go with him, because he holds with him an office that is backed up by the army. And that's why I'm exposing at this time the misconduct of our government, not because I'm attempting to overthrow it or undermine the position, but I am stating that those in those positions are not carrying them out correctly. Such that they might as well be going into the rooms with weapons to pillage. It's so harmful, so detrimental to the common good, that they might as well be running through the town and burning the buildings. But they do so with a perceived civility, but it's only an outward crust, like a scab over a wound. It's only an outward layer to conceal what's underneath. Often infection. And so there's an infection in our government, and it is rhetoric that is detrimental to the well-functioning facilities we have within our Constitution. And these referendums that are coming up, such as remove the woman from the Constitution. First tell the woman she runs the world, then remove her from the Constitution. Where's she running the world from? No man's land or no woman's land? So the Constitution preserves the woman in the Constitution because the woman preserves the family in the Constitution. And if Satan's attacking the children, which of course are the next generation and the future of the earth, he would at first attack Mammy. He doesn't need to attack her physically. He only needs to take her out of the Constitution and where the preservations of the instituted powers would preserve her. So he needs corrupt men in office to commit these offences, and these are seditious and treasonous acts. You cannot remove the woman from the Constitution, just like you cannot remove the vagina from the woman. She is naturally a woman. It's inhumane. It's a crime against humanity to try and desexualize a woman. And claim that she's a non-entity. First they tell her she runs the world and she's equal. You don't make a woman equal by removing her female identity. You make her equal by accommodating her femininity in that equality. Because you can't treat her equally without fully acknowledging who she is and what she is, which is a woman. You don't treat a woman equally to a man by what's the word for removing femininity? I don't know it. By removing that female derivation. She is a woman. She's born with female genitalia, and that's not all that is her femininity. Her manner, her characteristics, her nature, much about her is female. Uniquely to a man. And yes, she's the same but different. Same in ways, different in others. Same in ways with an augmentation or complexity. So that she's not identical, and therefore equality for the woman is not calling her a man. Equality for the woman is treating her fairly given her nature. So if you try to remove the female from the equation, you attack the children, the family, the entirety of what is the fundamental unit of society, and therefore the common good. And you are a crook, a marauder, a pillager, nothing short of a pirate. And that's the truth. The woman retains that title because God gave it to her. If you remove the woman from the Constitution, you crown Satan. And I'll not stand by and watch it before God. No chance. The woman is the woman. You tell her she runs the world and then remove her from the Constitution? Do you think they're stupid? Have all the men taken a seat? Am I last man standing? I hope not. Because what the devil does is he goes a step too far so he can take a step back, which is also a step forward. Any interference with our constitutional rights as it pertains to the family is treason and should be treated as such. Because there are certain things fundamental to the Constitution of Ireland that you are not permitted to change. And the woman is one such thing, and the family is one such thing. So they should tread very carefully, or they could all end up in jail. For life. Jesus is the authority that institutes the authorities. So before him, let his will be done. Because I have faith that he can change them and move them tomorrow. Blessings in Jesus' name. A holy kiss. Value the woman. Give her her rightful position. And yes, she did run the world from the house with the title Mammy, Woman, mother. Blessings in Jesus' name. A holy kiss.